right. Namaskar and welcome to NFL Masala. I'm your co-host, Anant.
And I am your other co-host, Rakshak. Welcome to Season 5, Episode 9. Nine of NFL Masala, where we talk about all the latest happenings in the NFL with a little bit of spice. Happy Monday, August 10th, everyone.
Already a spicy start with the Hitler impression. Thank you, Rakshak. It's exactly what we needed on a Monday night. Alrighty. So today we're going to be breaking down some the market news and then moving on to the best division in the NFL, the NFC North. Potentially 4 playoff teams. We'll see about the Vikings, but potentially 4 playoff teams this year. And today we're having 2 special guests, some dear friends of mine from the NBA journey that we're all on. From the Packers side, we got Nabil, and from the Bears side, we got Dieter. Say what's up, fellas. How's it going?
I'll go first. What's up, guys? My name is Nabil. Packer fan, as you can probably tell. I'll pass it off to Dieter.
Yeah. What's up, guys? What's up? Wearing the wrong colors right now, but Dieter up from the Bears side. Huge Bears fan. Go Bears. Bear down.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah. I mean, and one thing I've noticed, I see Nabil and my dear co-host with them cheese said, so I did not come alone. Here it is, new Swad Paneer, the real, the real cheese. So I brought this with me.
Spicy cheese, let's go. NFL Masala, classic.
Yeah, but anyway, you're not alone with all the cheeses. I brought mine with me just in case.
Alrighty, so let's move on, shall we? Before we move on to the NFC North, we're gonna start with some Dhamakadar news, and it's not as explosive as it was last week when we had 3 new starting running backs get franchise-changing, life-changing money, history-altering contracts. We just had 1 near history-altering contract. The Cowboys have re-signed Quinnen Williams, their D tackle, who they traded for from the Jets, on a 3-year, $105.9 million deal. It's a decent deal. We don't know. It's $101 million guaranteed. 63 of that guaranteed money is at signing. He's also going to earn a signing bonus of $31 million. They're basically front-loading all of that money, probably adding, very little in the later years of the contract. And it turns out that this annual average of $35 million is the second highest amongst defensive tackles. Now, is Quinnen Williams the second highest rated defensive tackle in the league? Probably not. But this is the Cowboys. They overpay for their star players anyways. So what are y'all's thoughts on that? Good contract, bad contract? What do y'all think? Whoever wants to go first.
I'll say it's kind of like a necessary contract. Like, you trade for this type of guy. He's the only real chip impact player that you got from the trade. He plays an impactful position at D tackle. Like, if you're a Cowboys fan, would you have liked for that to have paid to Micah Parsons? Yes, but you still have all this money that you have to pay someone, and it's kind of like a necessary move. So, good or bad, I think it depends on whether or not how production goes this year, but he pays a premier position. You have to pay someone. I thought like the numbers made sense, but time will tell if it's like a good sign or not.
At the end of the day, that's the going rate, and for the Cowboys specifically, a contract is all that matters because they have a long history of not giving them to begin with. And so I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt here in whatever amount they pay Quinnen Williams. At least it is an amount. So
that's true. All righty.
And let me just get my NFC, let's get a rival's take. Quinnen Williams, he's good. He does provide the interior support, but this is a new look defensive line that has had a lot of turnover. Kenny Clark, Rashawn Gary, Quinnen Williams, and then you're going to trust Donovan Ezaraku and Malachi Lawrence, and you're also banking on the fact that Christian Parker is going to turn things around in like 1 year or 2 years. So you're looking at this as a long-term deal. Whether does he play up to it? I mean, like he's had some flashes, but are you sure he's going to be paid that much? I mean, if it's just Jerry Jones having that Lazarus Pit kind of drink to figure out like, oh, this is going to take us back to our old Super Bowl days back in 96. Bullshit, motherfucker. I wouldn't say that. So, I mean, I mean, like, it's a service. It's a good I mean, for the Cowboys, it's a good contract. For us, I'm like, is it a bit of an overpay? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's my take on it. If it was like a $75 million thing, I would have got it. But like, now with the Jalen Carter extension, like thank God Howie Roseman did that. That's why he's the best. I mean, Cowboys going to Cowboys. What do you expect?
That is true.
Yep.
All right, what's next?
All right, and so there was a funny thing that happened in the AFC East today. So, according to Jordan Schultz, I was checking through the threads timeline. So apparently, the Patriots they said it first started. The Patriots are releasing offensive tackle Caden Wallace, who was a 3rd-round pick. But then, hold up, or as Hanuman Khan would say, hold up, wait a minute, get it how you live it, 10 toes in. And then it was actually a trade. So the Miami Dolphins traded a pick. I don't know what the trade compensation is, but the Patriots, before the Patriots could release Caden Wallace, the Dolphins stepped up and they made a trade. So they got an offensive tackle to help out. I think once the details come out, we find out a little bit more. And last but not least, Teddy Bridgewater. He's retired again. Cool, I guess.
Yep.
I mean, best of luck to him.
This is the final time that he's retiring. Apparently, there was, he said this time it's official. We'll see if that's the case. But there isn't really much to say. He retired previously. He came back. Now he's retiring again.
Yeah.
He probably knew that there wasn't anything else left in the tank. So now the Lions are pivoting to Josh Dobbs.
Wait,
we'll
Josh
probably
Dobbs?
not see. Yeah, Josh Dobbs, ex-Cardinal, ex-Viking.
The Pastronaut. I thought he was with the Pats now.
No. They recently just signed him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, we'll talk about more about that.
I will say the only reason Bridgewater came back to begin with is because all the kids he was coaching wanted him to go play again. But so he's going to go back to coaching at the middle school, high school team, whatever he was doing before he violated a bunch of NCAA laws or whatever the heck was going on over there. So
wasn't that like a kind of a
it was it was garbage.
Yeah.
It was garbage. He wanted to support his players and he bought him some stuff to help them out and they used him as a scapegoat for a bunch of nonsense rule changes. But hopefully he makes some changes that help out students later on. So Bridgewater can go continue on his own the stuff he's doing outside is really cool. So more power to him.
Yeah.
All right. And this, is a breaking news, Kachida news, in my opinion. But we'll see. The Seahawks are interested in signing Kerryon Arnold, the corner who was the Lions corner that they drafted in 2024. Now, Mike McDonald himself has confirmed that they're interested in signing him and they're, training him or testing him out. And this was after Kerryon Arnold was released by the Lions after he was arrested in Tampa on felony charges in connection with the robbery and kidnapping in early February. So it seems like the NFL obviously does not care about the players' malfeasances off the field.
Example, Deshaun Watson, lo and behold. You saw what the hell is happening with that.
Yeah.
It sucks. And the fact that Kerryon Arnold is getting an opportunity, it's mind-blowing. And
but like from a football perspective, it
Yeah.
totally makes sense. They lost Reek Woolen in the offseason, so he's going to be a perfect, if not a much better, replacement for Reek Woolen. They're probably just going to sign him for a very cheap deal, considering all the off the field issues is going to give the Seahawks leverage, since no other team potentially is very much interested in Karen Arnold. And if they do sign him, that kind of, maybe that doesn't guarantee them another Super Bowl appearance, but it definitely makes them closer, and they're, on par with the Rams in terms of like defensive capabilities. Because if the Rams get Aaron Donald, which in all likelihood, it seems like they're getting Aaron Donald, that D-line is going to be probably the most ferocious D-line in the past 15 years.
Easily.
There's no way. There's no offensive line in the league that's going to stop both Aaron Donald and Myles Garrett, along with Byron Murphy and Brian Young and Braden Fisk. Yeah, I mean, we already talked about this in the last episode, but it's wild. It's wild. But alrighty, that's it for us. In terms of the Makeda news, let's talk about what we're actually. Yeah.
And can I make I know this will be really quickly, but also please support Chris Johnson on his battle against ALS. That's for sure. And also this is non-football news, but a legend has passed away. Coach Don Nelson, basketball coach. He had the second most wins in the NBA. For me personally, he was the head coach of the Dallas Mavericks when he developed Dirk Nowitzki, brought in Steve Nash and Michael Finley together. And he was part of the Warriors teams that led the Run TMC, Tim Hardaway, Chris Mullins, and I forgot the other one. And of course, it's the We Believe Warriors, which beat my Mavs. I still have fucking nightmares over that shit. But other than that, rest in peace, Donnie. Thank you for what you've done for the game. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Okay. Alrighty. Now let's move on to the NFC North debate. We're gonna start with the division champs, the Chicago Bears. Peter.
Dieter's like smiling like crazy. I
cannot. The widest smile I've ever seen from Dieter.
It had a really nice ring to it.
I know.
The division champion, Chicago Bears. Yeah.
All right. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about what happened last year. Obviously, division champs, but how did the season play out for you guys last year?
I thought it was a great year for the city of Chicago, just because it had been so long since the Bears had played meaningful playoff football. I know they had a play-in round, I think, with Mitch Trubisky, like against the Tampa Bay Bucks that one year when they were like they were like 7-7 or 8-7. I don't know what the exact number is. They snuck into the 7th seed. But outside of that, this was like the first meaningful football since 2019. And then before that, as a wild card game since 2011, that NFC Championship game. So one, getting to play against the Packers, but also just being in playoff football again. And beyond that, the game against the Rams, I really thought it was Caleb Williams's welcome to the show. Hey, we belong here. Not only for him, but for Ben Johnson, the Bears offense, and everyone that was involved. Like Luther Burden had a great game. Colson Loveland, 10 catches for 120 plus yards. Everyone was just super involved, and for the Bears to end up at that position was a surprise, but it was also like a pleasant one and a good one that we can build on for next year. So yeah, great year for the Bears, but I think the whole thing just all resets now. So clean slate, it's 0-0. It was a great place to build off of, but we know that, like you said, like the NFC North is the toughest division in football. There's always 3 teams that are battling year in and year out for the playoffs, and any 3 of them could win the division too late into the year. There's a reason for that. So it's a new year, but it's a good year that we can build off of last year.
Okay. What about, from an offensive standpoint, defensive standpoint, what were some strengths and weaknesses that you saw in both?
Well, maybe let's start with the defensive side. The defensive side, really tackling. Like I
Mm,
would say, like they've been able to, from previous generations of the Bears defense, they've been always turnover driven, which makes sense. Deflections, getting to the ball and winning the turnover battle. But because of that, they've kind of over-indexed to that point where guys would try to go for that huge turnover ball and would either try to go for a fumble and a strip, and a 3-yard gain turns into a 6-yard gain. A 10-yard
mm,
completion turns into, all right, the guy breaks a tackle and now it's 12 yards. So I think tackling on the defensive side was a big thing. And they had part of it was linebackers that were dropping like flies. I don't know how much of that's on
mm,
conditioning or if it's just late into the year, but guys were going into the second and third front. But from a viewing point, I thought that was the biggest glaring weakness that the Bears had to fill in on the corners, the secondaries, the linebackers, just tackling on the backside. And then on the offensive side, I think it just continues to build on the connection that Caleb Williams has had. They've
mhm,
shored up the offensive line. Drew Dahlman did retire on the center position, so we're back to seeing a question mark turn into a strength to now going back to a question mark. So we'll see how that plays out. But a personal one I think I got is Roman Dunze.
mm,
You were Caleb Williams's draft mate. The potential and talent has been shown, but compared to guys like Luther Burden and Colson Loveland, guys that have really
mm,
shown out in big moments and in playoff moments, still looking for Roma Dunze to have his moment. So that's I think something that's glaring on the offensive end for the Bears too.
okay. What about, so, you brought up Colson Loveland. Initially, it seemed like that draft pick was kind of a question mark considering
Yeah.
that, you already had Cole Kmet. But it seemed like it paid off because if Cole Kmet is playing more of that like inline tight end position where he's more of a blocker, and you have Colson Loveland playing that like slot wide receiver, slot tight end type of
Yep.
position, you kind of have the best of both worlds in that scenario, right? You see that moving forward, or do you see some positions changing?
It's funny that you mentioned that because a lot of Bears fans were questioning why they had taken another tight end around the second or third round. Ben Johnson had made a guy move with it from a guy named Sam Roush, I think. He's a
Mm,
third round tight
mhm,
end. And so a lot of Bears fans were like wondering why. And I think it's exactly what you said. Each of the tight ends, they build a different role. And the way that draft pick went and the way that they might be keeping Cole Kmet around, a lot of
mhm,
rumors whether or not this is his last year, if he's a trade candidate. I think they'll always keep that tight end a role because, like what you said, I don't think they're ever going to use Colson Loveland as a true tight end.
mhm,
His like hands are in the dirt. Like he's never going to be that type of guy. I actually think he's going to be that slot TE, like you mentioned. So I think they're going to continue to have that division of labor. And
mhm.
they're going to continue to treat Loveland basically as a wide receiver that just happens to be able to land to like line in on the inline sometimes.
Okay. And now, the big question entering last season was, how is Caleb Williams going to perform? I know you mentioned Caleb Williams, stepping up when it mattered, especially under Ben Johnson's new scheme, kind of gelling. There were obviously rough patches in the beginning trying to get adjusted to the new scheme, but towards the end, you could clearly see that Ben
Yeah.
Johnson had a positive effect. But, from a statistical standpoint, it still doesn't seem that like true Caleb Williams has been unlocked. You still don't have 4,000 yards passing. It's barely, above 25 touchdowns. You did see a lot of scrambling and trying to evade pressure, trying to make plays, which is his strength, right? It's his escapability and his playmaking ability is his strength, but that can sometimes be, a negation, like in the first time you guys played the Packers, right? That was the game-ending interception by Keyshawn Nixon, but that was another thing that you could kind of see Caleb Williams faltering on, right?
Yeah.
So what was your opinion on Caleb Williams? I'll just say that.
Yeah, I would say to maybe start off, like I think the metrics that he wasn't able to hit, I think that is something that you're going to look for this year. That's going to be a good bar.
Mhm.
But one thing I was kind of surprised with is for Ben Johnson being very record setting, he didn't seem very pressed about the whole like I need to get Caleb Williams to X amount of touchdowns or X
Right.
amount of yards. I think it's continuing to gel with him, and you could see the not only the numbers but the confidence that he had November onwards was a different viewpoint from like the first 10 to 12 weeks too. So I
Mhm.
think next year too will be year two, full start with Ben Johnson, full off season in and better weapons. So we'll see. I if you'd want to see what an expectation would be,
Mhm.
um I think top three QB in the NFC is very attainable for him, if not the best.
Okay.
But like he should be striving for someone. Why can't he be the best QB in the NFC?
Right.
That's
He's
not a
got the
bad
tools.
that's not a bad
Mhm.
exactly that's not a bad bar to have. But at the
Mhm.
very least, I think he could be a top three QB in the NFC. And um I think he came into training camp with 20 pounds lighter. We'll see if that makes him
Oh, wow.
more of a pocket passer, or maybe they see him in the read option, but diet's been cleaner, and I think this is going to be a big year for him. Madden cover as well, so we'll see if he rises to the occasion. But I do think they're going to be less metric focused than before. Not saying that they won't
Mhm.
hit the 4,000 passing mark. I think they do, but
Mhm.
now knowing what he can do, I think they'll hit it, and then we'll just continue to go from there.
Gotcha. All righty. So now speaking about this upcoming season, let's talk about what they did in the offseason, right? Speaking about their roster changes specifically from a free agent standpoint. Looking at who they brought in, they re-signed Jalen Jones, their corner. They also re-signed Braxton Jones, tackle, to a 1-year deal. Re-signed DeMarco Jackson to a 2-year deal. Elijah Hicks as a backup safety, Case Keenum as a backup quarterback, and a bunch of other depth players.
Yep.
Now, they did lose out on C.J. Gardner-Johnson, Devin Duvernay, Andrew Billings, Kevin Byard, and Jaquan Brisker, who I thought was a key loss. What are your thoughts on those losses? I'll get to who they brought in from a free
Yeah,
agent
definitely.
standpoint, but from re-signings, this is what they did.
And Brisker chose a great time to have his best game ever on the playoff game against the Rams.
Mhm.
And I love Jaquan Brisker ever since he's come in. And what you saw with Jaquan Brisker was the two sides of the Brisker coin. On one side, he is an enforcing thumper, can stop the
Mhm.
run, can go up to the box, really set the tone for the defense on the safety end. But on the other side, you have a hard hitter that will get into a collision, could be in the concussion protocol. A day-to-day
Mhm.
can turn into week to week. All of a sudden, you might be only playing 6 to 7 games. And it gets really hard with Jaquan Brisker, the health bug. Uh,
Mhm.
the Bears had a tough decision to make and had to let him walk. And it was one that I was not happy about, but I can kind of
Mhm.
understand now, a few months removed, that all right, let's take the moment of the game aside. Months now, looking back, I'm kind of glad the Bears had the foresight to not pay him. Because emotions aside, Jaquan Brisker has been great, but a
Mhm.
defensive health liability, the best ability is availability, and
Mhm.
that has been really hard for him. So uh, they've addressed it in the draft. Elijah Hicks was a good pickup, but I do think that he was probably the biggest departure that I missed to see. Second, no, on secondary honorable mention is probably Andrew Billings as well.
Right, right. The depth tackle, I think starter, right?
Yeah, he
For a
was
couple games.
he
Yeah.
could he's definitely played that starter role for them. And
Mhm.
then through the draft, as the Bears have added, he's become a rotational piece. But Billings
Mhm.
was definitely a big run stuffer that will be missed as well.
Gotcha. Now, in terms of like positive news, it's not like you guys completely ignored the position. I think one of the best signings that you guys did was signing Kobe Bryant from the Seahawks to a safety position, basically replacing Jaquan Brisker on a 3-year, $40 million contract. Then you brought in Devin Bush from the Browns, who had an up year, right? From the Steelers, you could clearly see a decline as the years progressed. He wasn't really billed to, the 10th overall pick that in terms of like where he was picked, right? He wasn't playing up to that level. But then when you look at the Browns and the way that he performed, he cleaned up a little bit of his mistakes. He was a sideline to sideline player still, and he operated well in that defense. And now you bring him over on a 3-year, $30 million deal to be your Mike linebacker. You bring in Neville Gallimore from the Colts on a 2-year deal. You bring in Jedrick Wills. So I guess you're replacing Andrew Billings with Jedrick Wills, who once upon a time was like a really good, strong run stop, or not run stop, but a really good tackle in terms of rushing. Then you bring in Khalif Raymond, return specialist as well. And then the big ones, you trade away DJ Moore for a 2nd-round pick. And then you also trade away Garrett Bradbury for a 5th-round pick. So talk to me about these. How happy are you? What are your thoughts about these?
Yeah, maybe let's start with one that you had just mentioned, DJ Moore. His impact on the Bears organization and what he means to the franchise from the time of the trade to now. He's been steadily producing. So it was unfortunate that the Bears did have to let him go, but or go through a trade. But with that pick and with that Brown capital, kind of replaces what they had to give away with what you had said, Garrett Bradbury as well too. Now what I'm hearing though, I'm not sure if how Garrett Bradbury is doing in camp. It's not looking to be the best. So that does happen at times, but the trade at the time made sense. Hey, we needed to fill a stopgap in, and looks like Garrett Bradbury was brought in for the starter, but the center that they had drafted is looking to win the battle a lot right now. So and is having a good camp as well. So we'll see if Logan Jones or even if another lineman steps up and they try to shift along the line, kind of play that carousel. We'll still see what's the best 5 out there. But if you want to go back to like the key signings, Devin Bush was a good pickup. I thought they got him at a good price. He traditionally had been really strong with, which you had said, the Steelers. Had a down year with the Steelers and then went to the Cleveland Browns and had a surprisingly good uptick. So they picked him up at a good rate, I think. Kobe Bryant did get injured at training camp, and I think that's something to bring up. Obviously, that does change how the signing went, but I'll say before that, I thought the numbers made sense. Kobe Bryant coming off that Super Bowl, maybe you do have to pay a little bit more of a premium. Maybe he's really only his valuation's at 3 or 35, so maybe they paid 5 extra, but that's usually that Super Bowl tax that you end up paying for. But yeah, it was unfortunate that he had went down with the knee injury. But yeah, we'll see how he shows up next year. But I think one signing that we want to really look for is Khalif Raymond. The Bears, if you I don't know if you had remembered, but they had struggled to get in top end speed to their dynamic offense. And I know Luther Burden is going to have that role moving forward to be that vertical threat, but Khalif Raymond can be that quick hitting threat between that slot, the quick hitting routes, as well as a good returner. So that's something the Bears have struggled with too. They hadn't had a good strong punt returner, kick returner, and like you had mentioned, Duvernay leaving. I think Raymond, interesting enough, fills up 3 or 4 different spots. So I thought value wise, he's probably the best value signing here, along with Devin Bush as well.
Right.
Can I just say that Kobe Bryant injury is pretty big with the safety guys. You guys, the Bears did miss out on. That's, I believe, 8 to 10 weeks with a knee hyperextension is the estimate for Kobe Bryant. So he will not be here for the first half of the season for sure. That also puts an unbelievable amount of pressure on, and this is maybe a segue into your discussion on draft picks, on their first rounder from this year.
Yeah. Dylan Thieneman.
Dylan Thieneman.
Yep. And I would love to go into a conversation with this. So fun, super quick, I guess. Dylan Thieneman drafted out of Oregon, but previously spent a ton of time at Purdue. The Thienemans at Purdue University, three brothers. He's the youngest of three, so I actually graduated with one of his older brothers.
No way!
It's a household Purdue name. So for him to be the youngest brother, to make it to the NFL first round, it kind of feels like from that small town of Indiana and like that range of Purdue fans, it feels like all of the Purdue kind of got drafted that night. So it was really cool to see Dylan Thieneman taken in that first round, 25. But yeah, he's going to be put into a lot of pressure, but he's the best of the bunch. He's athletic, hybrid, can jump, strong, good size, ball disruptor. I honestly think he's a holistic safety. A lot of people at draft thought he would go way higher in the high teens. So for him to come down and land at the 25th pick, yeah, I'm really ecstatic for the Bears. But again, also look for Logan Jones, especially because I think would not be surprised if he wins the starting battle at center. Obviously, you would have liked Garrett Bradbury to take that, but it's a competition.
Could be better in depth at that point.
Exactly. And I'll highlight one more, the Sam Roush pick at on the third round. This was probably the pick that the Bears fans were a little bit on the question marks of, like, hey, do we really need to take a tight end? There were bigger issues at hand. Do we not take a linebacker? But this is where we kind of just shut up and trust Ben Johnson. Maybe there's a different role for him. We did take Colston Loveland 10th overall, and look how that turned out. He had 130 yards in his playoff debut. So I would definitely think to trust Ben Johnson on that, but that's probably the only pushback on the draft so far.
Yeah,
Go
ahead. No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I will say that I would like to echo Dieter's comments on Dylan Thieneman. I think he was, depending on how you rank it, probably the second best safety in this draft, depending on how you rank Emmanuel McNeil-Warren. But I think the logical choice, I thought, was the Vikings taking him, and we'll talk about them a little bit later at 18 because they just lost out on Harrison Smith. But the Bears getting him later worked out really well for them, considering the safety that they lost. So I think that was a fantastic pick. I think him dropping to 25 was already insane. So huge value pick for them there. Big like shout out. I think he's going to be fantastic.
Okay. Yeah, and Sam Roush also seems like what you said earlier, Dieter. It could be like the replacement pick for Cole Kmet. If Cole Kmet is entering that contract year, it could be that this is just the precursor to that. Get him accustomed into the scheme before you even have to get a rookie player. So you have that 1 year of experience under the belt before he gets onto the starter position. But yeah, that's excellent. I think I actually really liked Malik Muhammad. Coming out of Texas, I think he was a really strong. He was playing initially on the outside, but he could also play a little bit of the nickel position. Kind of on a smaller size. I think he's like 5'11", or he's 6 foot. So I really loved, especially in his junior year, the amount of hard hits that he had. I think that was one of the most, not shocking, but highlight reels that I've seen from him.
Yeah, and for a corner to have that
exactly.
Something.
Yeah, that mentality, and he's just 21, right? So, yeah, I think this is a really strong pick for you guys. That's going to be a potential starter. But so now, with the draft done, with all the other positions re-signings, we also forgot to talk about Darnell Wright. He recently re-signed on a 4-year deal, I believe, right? As one of the highest paid tackles in the league. Obviously, he seems like probably your starter for the next 10 years. Right? He's that good.
Fingers
He's one of the best. Yeah. Fingers
Yeah.
crossed, obviously. Fingers crossed. But yeah, he's one of the best, right tackles in the game. Probably top 3 in the league right now. Definitely going to progress even more, but I think that was a really good one. So now we've talked about all the offseason changes, all the people that you guys brought in, draft picks. What are your thoughts now going into the season? What do you expect from the offense and the defense? And then at the end, what do you expect the record and the result of this team going to be? This is also the schedule for you.
This year the schedule is going to be a little bit more intense than usual.
Mhm.
I don't know if we repeat as division champs. I think every team did get a little bit better. The Bears, as Ben Johnson had said, are probably the biggest regression candidates right now. So that's what he's been preaching to them in the locker room. I don't want to take sides here and say that they are going to be a huge regression candidate, but the schedule's tough. The schedule's tough. I don't know if they hit 11 games again. It would be nice for them to hit 11 games. I don't know if they hit 12 games, but
Yeah, because you have the NFC North, but you have the Seahawks, the Eagles, you got the Patriots still. Jaguars could be a spicy team, especially late in the season. You got the Bills. Potentially
it's tough.
could.
It's tough. And
Yeah.
that last stretch, I'm looking at it
Mhm.
right now. Buffalo, Green Bay, Detroit, at Minnesota.
Yeah.
And then we'll take away at Miami, but you stretch it out, then it becomes at Detroit, Jacksonville, a little bit of break in Miami, and then at Buffalo, Green Bay, Detroit, at Minnesota. That is a tough way from week 12 to 18 to end your schedule.
Right.
So that gauntlet in December is going to be a real test maker right
Right.
there, because it does start off relatively at the Panthers, the Vikings at home. The Eagles would be a tough matchup, but first primetime matchup at home, that'll be a good
Mhm.
game. I think they start off. I think they can realistically start off 3-1 before they head to Lambeau.
Right.
I think heading up to then the next stretch of the 4, it turns into a crapshoot. From week 5 onwards to week 12, anything goes, I think. And then
Right.
week 12 onwards, it's the gauntlet. So the key for the Bears in the schedule, you got to start off strong those first 4 weeks.
Right. And obviously injuries, because I feel like there are holes still from the depth position. Like you still look at linebacker, potentially safety if there are, God forbid, if there are any injuries on in the
True.
secondary, right? Some depth pieces might not be there. Offensive line, I think, is still fine. The depth in the offensive line is really good. But yeah, okay. So still like 10 to 11 wins is what you're saying, probably playoffs. Do you take a deeper run into the playoffs this year, or do you still think that there's one more year of progression required for the Bears before they make championship Super Bowl level run?
From what I've seen so far, I think they make the playoffs. And then, as we know, the NFL playoffs, it's one game at a time. Everyone goes. But
Right.
now that they've been able to hit to that wild card round, I think now the expectation / status quo is they're competing for a Super Bowl, getting to the Super Bowl. That's the next step.
Right.
I don't think I think if you ask Ben Johnson, or I think you ask the Bears players, I think now the floor is set to, we got to make the postseason every year, and then from
Right.
there we'll enter the arena and we'll let the chips fall where it stands.
Mhm. Okay. Alrighty. Nabil, any thoughts on the Bears?
Nope, that'll do it for me. I think that's a good rundown.
Awesome. Alrighty. Thank you again, Dieter, for your take on the Bears. It's it's a pleasure to talk to everybody else, especially experts of your own teams. And now we're going to move on to the greatest team in the history of the NFL. 13-time champions, the greatest in terms of taking care of their fans, taking care of their players, making sure that they don't piss off, the community, unlike other teams. The only community-owned franchise in the history of team sports.
Dieter, you're listening to this? I think we're zoning out. I'm joking.
I'm just waiting. I'm like fast forwarding.
No, like that one Dave Chappelle skit, like he says, like hit it forward.
Yeah,
it's okay. This is Nabil and I's turn. We've been waiting for this. The Green Bay Packers. Let's talk about it. 2025. Nabil, let's talk about what happened last year.
Yeah, Green Bay Mother Loving Packers, man. I mean,
hell yeah.
Look, I think just as a look back into the season, I think weeks 1, 2, 3, the first couple games of the season, we were on one of the highest highs. I think we were the pundits were talking about us like we were the chosen ones, and stuff was finally coming together. I think at the end of the day, things came back down to earth with the Browns game when we realized that, as usual, the Packers have a struggle with managing the game as the clock runs out, and I think the same issues manifested again as we saw later with the Cowboys game, and then at the end of the season as well. I think holistically, we saw kind of what the Packers could be last season at the beginning. We saw the heights that they could reach if all the stuff was going right, and we saw that the lows that they could reach when all the stuff goes wrong. I think last year we were, robbed of our true power at the end of the season with the injuries that we faced, Micah Parsons, Tucker Kraft, etc. I think the biggest thing for us was realizing that the importance of having some of those like guys, not just in terms of their skill on the field, but also like the rah-rah, like actual, like the ability to get the team together. Jordan Love is fantastic. I mean, he's an incredible QB. I think, also has a case to be for the best in the NFC if he can push forward this year. But at the same time, he is also a very like tempered individual, an extremely like even-keeled figure, which is what you need on an NFL team. But that being said, you're also looking for some guys to rile the team up. And on offense, that's very much Tucker Kraft, and on defense, that's very much Micah Parsons. And you saw the effects of that as the year ran through its course. The effect of having those guys not out on the field with the rest of the team. I think from a larger perspective, the theme of consistent issues being consistent will also appear in itself on our special teams, as that cost us multiple games again. Including that wild card round against the Bears we just discussed, because obviously we can't make a kick to save our lives, and so there have been some major changes since then, but as usual, the Packers went on a bit of a roller coaster with some heartbreak at the end. It's good. The theme continues, but at the same time, I think we saw what could be in the future in terms of the team. A younger team getting slightly older now. Some of those contracts manifesting as the years progress, and I think last year was a snippet of like what heights we could reach if all the stuff goes right.
Okay. Yeah, let's take a deeper dive then. Offensively, defensively, obviously starting those first 3 games, defensively, we look like, the best defense in the league with Micah Parsons just completely destroying what was the Detroit Lions, completely annihilating any hope that Jared Goff had at succeeding. And then, the Cowboys game comes, and it seems like all of the aura that we had developed in those first 3 games just completely went out the window from a defensive standpoint. Offensively, obviously, Jordan Love, honestly, he is a top 10 quarterback. I will not hear any slander against it, because time after time, he's made these boneheaded picks, kind of like Brett Favre has. But statistically speaking, Jordan Love this past year was the second highest in terms of adjusted EPA per dropback for quarterbacks, right behind Drake May. In the past several years, from since 2020 in the playoffs, Jordan Love has the highest EPA per dropback rank. He's also very, fourth lowest in terms of pressure to sack rate. So if he does get pressured, he rarely ever takes sacks, which is another positive that not a lot of great QBs have. And then when you look at QBR, he's third in the league. QBR on third down. So like when it matters, he's also second in the league, third in DVOA. So he obviously is that sort of quarterback, a top 10 quarterback, but you could clearly see those mistakes come up in crunch time. So what were your thoughts on the offense and the defense?
Yeah, I mean, look, the offense is like what it always has been, but we don't necessarily have a star guy to go through when the stuff when the going gets tough. Tucker Kraft was that guy for a while to really like batten down the hatches and get stuff started. But I think consistently across the board, we used the weapons that we had. Now, again, in Packers fashion, we didn't have as much involvement from Matthew Golden as some fantasy drafters would have hoped. But I think any Packers fan would have told you drafting him last year wasn't going to be a good idea to begin with. Because again, the Packers like to develop their younger players, even regardless of when they're drafted. If it's a wide receiver, especially, they're going to be developed, they're going to be trained, they're going to be brought up into the system, and that's the way that the Packers roll. And so I think last year was a great display of kind of what we're planning with Matthew Golden, giving him some more opportunities. Obviously, we continued with the safety blanket that was Romeo Doubs. We'll talk about that a little bit later. But Christian Watson also, health concerns aside, looked solid throughout the season when he was playing. Jayden Reed as well. Again, he had some injury concerns as well. The biggest thing for the Packers on offense is the fact that we can plug and play our wide receivers. So if we do have injuries, it is a good thing to have those guys as backups all across the board. I think one of the important pieces to also discuss was the fact that our offensive line had a lot of challenges last year in terms of health. A lot of people being moved around. I think folks like Anthony Belton, folks like Jordan Morgan, Anthony Belton, we need to figure out what's the best places for them to be on that line. I think right now is that with the injuries aside, we gotta make sure that's in a good spot. I think Aaron Banks struggled. I think we were questionable on that last year a month. I think when we did this, we were also having some question marks about if that signing was going to be worth it. I think as we saw in a couple weeks into the year that again, he's fine. He's all right as a guy to play as the guard position. Certainly not worth the money that we're paying him, but he's just kind of right. He's there. He'll exist. And so when you have a guy like that on the line, it puts a lot of pressure on your tackles. And so we got to make sure that those guys are, set up in the best spot. Zach Tom, who has recently changed his name, officially, I think. And so we'll get that right. But the other side, Belton, Morgan with the guard on the other side, we got to make sure that the offensive line is in a good spot. I think when it comes to running backs, Josh Jacobs did what he needed to last year. I think he accomplished what the job he gave him for him. He continues to be that thumper, but he also continues to take a lot of punishment. And I think that we need to make sure that we have guys who can spell him. I think we lost some of our backups going into this year. We'll discuss that a little bit later as well. But when it comes from the offensive standpoint last year, I think business as usual from what we expected. I think when it comes to the defense, like you mentioned, a lot of improvements from Micah Parsons, but we wanted to see, I think, a little bit more from, I think, some of the veteran guys on the team. I think the younger players, Edgerrin Cooper, I think, was fantastic. I think Javon Bullard had a good year. But we wanted to see some, a little bit more out of guys who were, a little bit older. We wanted to see Lucas Van Ness take a little bit of a jump forward. Keyshawn Nixon, we'll get to the secondary in a second here, but the linebacking core, Cooper was fantastic, but we got to get some of that edge rush a little bit better now with Lucas Van Ness. He's got to take a step forward. He's been saying it for years now, but when it comes to the secondary, that's always been our weakness. That's always been a problem ever since Jair left. And one of the things that we got to focus on looking forward is to how do we fix that? I think we'll get to the drafting and a little bit of the pieces that we added and removed a little bit later here in a second. But Keyshawn Nixon was not a great player. I think the rest of the folks in the cornerbacking room also not great. Only so much pressure you can put on the safeties. Look, Xavier McKinney had a fantastic year 2 years ago, but I think last year he struggled a little bit more because there was so much pressure on him from the lack of cornerbacking ability. Beyond that, Evan Williams is fantastic, man. He had a case to be one of the best safeties in the NFC starting at the beginning of the year, but he struggled as well down the road because of the pressure that was put on him from the cornerbacks. And across the board, you got to take a look at more of a holistic approach to the defense. One of the pieces that was fantastic last year was Jeff Hafley and making sure that that stuff was connected. Now we no longer have that, so we have to see how Gannon, Mr. Did you write a card to like practice or whatever, is now our defensive coordinator. And so now a lot of changes will be made. We'll see how stuff works. I think this is the year to see, with Micah Parsons missing at the beginning, to really see the development of some of those younger players.
Okay. Yeah, excellent breakdown. I completely agree with you from a defensive standpoint, right? It's, the loss of Michael Parsons meant that our pass rush couldn't be as effective, which meant more pressure on the secondary. And then the injuries to the secondary, where you lose out on Nate Hobbs, you have Keyshawn Nixon routinely giving up plays. Even though he's had some clutch interceptions, he's also made some boneheaded, dumb fucking mistakes that irritate you so much, right? Picking up all those stupid penalties. And I remember, I think I was talking about at the end of the season, we were looking at the amount of penalties that the Packers had. They were like top 10 in pre-snap penalties from both offense and defense. So it seems like this is an issue that has been prevailing under Matt LaFleur's tenure for the past 4 or 5 years. It has always been an issue that we've had consistently high rates of offensive pre-snap penalties, defensive, pass interference, or some boneheaded mistakes. It just seems like the maturity to not make boneheaded mistakes just isn't there. And this is not something that you would want from a head coach who's been with the team for the past 8 years.
Yeah, I will say one last point. And I want to keep this moving as we could continue the process, but I will say from a coaching standpoint, we did not see what we needed to from the non-defensive coaching. I think Matt LaFleur absolutely did not put his best foot forward, especially in the playoff games when it comes to some of the time management. And then lastly, what the hell does Adam Stenavich even do? I genuinely don't know what job he has on the team. And whatever it is, he's doing it badly. So I don't know what his job is, but he sucks at it. And so I think the question really is to figure out, like, if he's doing the one who's trying to, I know MLF has the play calling duties, but if he's the one creating some of those stuff, it's just not working. And so there needs to be some pretty big changes when it comes to some of the play calling, some of the coaching pieces here.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk about, obviously, the playoffs ended in miserable fashion. I think we lost to, I don't even want to remember at this point, but we lost to
the Bears.
The Bears, right? Yeah. It's man. I remember because Dieter and I, we were both watching that game. In man, that
special teams and clock management, man. Again, those are the only reasons. You can say what you want. A fantastic job by the Bears on the comeback there. Kudos to them. But at the end of the day, we lost. We killed ourselves. It wasn't like the Bears did a fantastic job, but the Packers beat themselves that game. You can't have 7 missed points on kicks and then also not know how to use your timeouts at all at the end of the game. It's just embarrassing levels of mismanagement of everything across the board. Bisaccia is gone, so we no longer have those, special team stuff. McManus is going to be, I hope he's tossed off a bridge somewhere. And so there's we gotta, we have some new kickers coming in, so who the hell knows what's gonna happen with the Packers. It seems to be in camp that they're not doing great either, so Packers gonna continue to have special teams woes maybe, but at the end of the day, that playoff game specifically was just us. Most, I think, what was the Breece Hall quote for the Jets, where most teams shoot themselves in the foot, we just shoot ourselves in the head. And that's that's basically what the Packers did at the end of the season.
Yeah. Well, that was that season. Let's talk about some positive news. What happened in the offseason? All right, let's break down some of our moves. Now, let's start from, who we let go of and who we re-signed from a team's, standpoint. So we did let go of Zane Anderson. We let go of Romeo Dobbs. He was an unrestricted free agent. let go of Kingsley and Igbare, who I thought was going to be a pretty decent starter for us, but we did draft Aaron Mosby and Colin Oliver to replace him. We did lose out on Rasheed Walker, and a big component, Quay Walker had some of his issues, but he was a key component of that linebacking duo with Edge Cooper. So losing him out, and then losing out Malik Willis and Emmanuel Wilson. So what are your thoughts on these losses?
I think they're kind of the gains. I think we'll get to in a second here to kind of mitigate some of these issues. But I will say that Romeo Doubs was a fantastic safety blanket for Jordan Love. But again, he's the type of guy who's plug and play. Like, we'll be able to remove some things. Matthew Golden's going to be taking his position, and I think that's going to be a good step up for him, which was necessary to begin with. Rasheed Walker, I mean, obviously that's a loss I think we somewhat expected when it came to the offensive line. Quay Walker specifically, linebacking issues are going to be it's may manifest themselves, but we have Zaire Franklin we signed from the Colts to be a replacement for him. Again, he was the type of guy who did really well some games, did really poor some other games. He's gone to the Raiders. I more hope he does well, but I'm not going to specifically be too upset about losing Quay. He did well for us, but I think we can make up that stuff. Obviously, backup QB like Malik Willis, he won't find, but he deserved a starting role. So overall, when it comes to the losses, I'm not going to be too upset at the folks we lost. I think it was kind of natural. We expected all of these to kind of come up, and so but for the guys we brought in, for the guys we re-signed, I think it works out.
Right. That makes sense. I mean, we retained Chris Brooks, Brenton Cox Jr., who I really loved in a couple of, key plays that he made, especially against the Cowboys, if I'm not wrong. Then you you retained Jonathan Ford, Darian Kennard, Bo Melton, who's had some really flashy plays, a couple plays here and there. Aaron Mosby again, Christian Welch, and then obviously this re-signing some of the big players that we've had. Sean Ryan, who's now our starting center moving forward. Christian Watson, who's going to be our number one wide receiver. Isaiah McDuffie, who is going to take that LB2, probably weak side linebacker, if I'm not wrong. And then Devontae Wyatt, who's going to be our starting defensive tackle. So, like you said, we did lose out on some key playmakers, but based on who we retained and who we brought in, I think it's definitely a positive.
I thought it was really interesting that they let Dobbs go, but that kind of just signals how much they believe in Christian Watson. And that's a guy, at least from the opposite side, I do think other divisional opponents respect Christian Watson, rivalry aside. I think he's someone that can be dynamic, and he could be the true wide receiver one that the Packers, I think, for a while have been looking for since Davante Adams has left. I think right now, since Davante Adams has left, it feels like the way the Packers have approached the receiver room is we have a bunch of high wide receiver 2 guys that any given week could be that one. It could be Romeo Doubs. It could be Christian Watson. I'm missing two names right now. Jaden Reed, the guy from Michigan State. And who?
Yeah. Well,
Dontayvion Wicks.
So there's, I feel like them signaling, hey, we're going to cut ties with Dobbs and then re-sign Christian Watson says, hey, I think we are signaling in on a true wide receiver 1 now, and we want to build with him and then Jaden Reed, and rather not do this committee thing. But I've had a fortune to know Romeo Doubs just because of fantasy football, and he was one of the few Packer receivers that followed a lot. So because of that, I've had a chance to understand the Packers wide receiver room through that whole segue. So I thought that was the only thing that kind of stuck out to me with the additions and re-signings and free agency losses.
Yeah. If you want to go, not that we want to talk about some of the trades. Obviously, we lost. Rashawn Gary stuff aside, we already discussed that before. Colby Wooden, who I think played well here and there and in a couple different plays, but getting Zaire Franklin makes sense. The Tavian Wicks was a pretty big one. I think losing out on another wide receiver under our belt was, not great. But at the same time, look, we have Jaden Reed, we have Christian Watson, we have like Matthew Golden, who will have a much bigger role in this offense, who is going to be hybrid. I think he's going to be taking the majority of the Romeo Dobbs role, but also messing around on some of the stuff on the inside. They're going to give him some leeway. So I think that's what we need. I think if we had kept either of those guys, I just think Matthew Golden just doesn't get used enough, and we use a first round pick on him, man. So like we gotta put him in there.
We got it. And when you look at training camp and a couple of the games that Matthew Golden had played, he significantly outperformed Dontavian Wicks. Like the biggest issue with Wicks was that he consistently dropped the ball. Over the course of 2 years, I think he was probably in the top 5 of receivers who consistently drop the ball, like the highest number of drops. And you just cannot sustain that, considering that we spent, like you said, a first-round pick on Matthew Golden. So, yeah, I agree. These trades, obviously, it was, kind of significant. But at least we got the Rashawn Gary, contract off the books. We did get a 4th-round pick from the Cowboys. And then from additions, we did bring in Benjamin St-Juste to beef up a little bit of that secondary room. I kind of like Benjamin St-Juste to replace Nate Hobbs on a very cheap deal. And in training camp, have you seen that, they're starting St-Juste and our now draft pick, Brandon Cisse, yeah. So that is some really positive news. We brought in Sky Moore to be a return specialist and also a wide receiver for some more depth. Javon Hargrave, who's listed as out and unavailable, but I think he's going to shore up that nose tackle once he gets healthy, because Nazir Stackhouse just was not cutting it. I mean, there's a reason why he's like a 6th rounder. But yeah, what are your thoughts besides Zaire Franklin on some of these additions?
I think you covered it. I think that's exactly what we wanted them to do. Each position is specifically to replace someone who's already there. I think having a returner in Sky Moore is huge because we have struggled with the returning position for a while. Nixon's not fantastic at it, and I don't know why the hell we had Josh Jacobs returning kicks for a couple seconds there. So, yeah. But we can discuss the draft picks if we want to. Obviously, getting Braden Cisse is huge. I think, as you mentioned, in camp, he is starting alongside Benjamin St-Juste, and Keyshawn Nixon is currently working with the 2s, which is a huge deal for us. One of the other pieces I will say, all the way at the bottom of that board in round 6 is Trey Smack, who is the kicker from Florida. Now, I was potentially thinking the kicker from Michigan could be a conversation in some of that stuff as well. Different struggles there, we'll see. But Trey has not looked, he's been fine in training camp thus far, but he is shanking 35, 40-yarders. He seems to be making some of the 50-plus ones, which is curious, but I don't know. I think the Packers also let go of one of our other kickers and sent another one free agency as well, another guy to bring in. I think across the board, this draft we knew we traded a bunch of picks this draft. So I think that 2nd round, but in Cisse is the big one. If he can play from the beginning, that'll be huge for us because we need cornerback help really, really, really bad. One of the other pieces, and we'll get into it in a second here. Do we want to move on to
Yeah.
I will say the big story for this upcoming year, now that we've talked about some of the additions and subtractions, is injuries. When does Micah Parsons come back off of his injuries? When is Tucker Kraft available to play for us on a new deal, potentially, hopefully, fingers crossed? And then beyond that, I think just now, as of this morning, in a walking boot is Javon Bullard. And they did say now that it is not as big of a problem. They did say it's just a precaution that he has some issues going on. But again, we know exactly how those things leak into the season slowly. Jaden Reed had the same issues when he came in, and he had Jones fracture that he had to get shored up in about week 3 or 4. Now that only happened because he broke his collarbone. But I will admit, the Packers have a really, 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 really bad history of dealing with injuries. Because of our strength and conditioning woes. And so if this becomes an issue going forward, I do not have faith at all in our staff to be able to correct some of these problems. And I'd rather have him sit for a little bit of time to recover fully than jump right in. So it is a curious situation. People come in and out. What is other interesting injury news that hasn't happened is that we have and I'm going to knock on whatever wood I can find here, a non-injured Marshawn Lloyd. Which is massive, because if we can get him actually playing, that'd be really cool. Because who knows what happens to Josh Jacobs' legal troubles coming forward in the next year? I think he's fine to play for this year. I think next year is going to be more of a curious question for him.
Right.
But we really need some of the running back help. So I think the biggest question for this year is how long we can hold off with our injured players. I think our schedule at the beginning of the season is a little bit easier, I think, but at the same time, like, if we lose a couple in a row and it's not looking great, that doesn't put us up on a right start for when Parsons and Kraft will be coming back. I think Parsons, conservatively is like week 7 or 8. I want to say, right? Anand, correct me if I'm wrong. But at the same time, like, I don't want him playing if he's just going to get injured. Like, if the season's not going well,
we don't want
another here. Yeah, I hate to be a doer, but situation. I hate, like, I don't want to say that we shouldn't, be playing to our full strength or abilities. But if the year kind of starts off on a bad note, I'd rather have a healthy Parsons going into the future than force him back on the field against the Carolina Panthers week 8 and watch him get injured. So,
right.
I don't know.
Yeah. So, all right. So let's talk about your final thoughts on what we're expecting from the Packers this season. Record-wise, overall offense, defense. I know you mentioned, obviously, health and injuries, and that plays a big part. Micah Parsons being healthy, Tucker Kraft. It from all likelihood, it does seem that he is healthy, but coming off of an ACL tear, it is a significant rehab, right? Yeah, he's progressed
100%.
significantly, but it is a significant rehab. So there is that. So let's talk about the schedule. What do you see from the Packers this upcoming season?
Yeah, I mean, the good thing, as I mentioned before, is that the beginning of the season looks not as tough for us. The Minnesota Vikings will be coming, we'll talk about them later, into a kind of a confused situation. They need to figure some stuff out, and I think that first game is when they're going to do it. The Jets are the Jets. We don't need to talk about that any further. The Falcons and Buccaneers are next against scrappy teams, but the NFC South is always like just whoever's 8-7 wins that division anyways. And then we obviously the Bears coming up in week 5 is going to be the game we got to take a watch out for. So I think if we're able to get off on a hard start, get a couple games under our belt, not lose too many at the beginning of the season, we should be okay with Micah Parsons coming back week 7, week 8. The ending of the end of the season is going to be tough.
Week 9 onwards.
Yeah, week 9 onwards, 100%. I think the Patriots going forward, I think the bye being late in the season hurts us a little bit in terms of our injuries as well. I would have loved to have last year's bye, that week 5, week 6 one that we had this year. But that being said, Rams coming right out of the bye, that's going to be a really, really tough game. I think Bills are there, obviously, the Bears again, and the Texans, that defense, and then the Detroit Lions to close it out. And so, it's heavier at the end, which helps us out. I want to be like optimistic and say we can make a run towards getting into the playoffs, make a real impact here at the end of the season. But I also want to be tempered. I want to be realistic and say that, like, if we struggle at the beginning, I think we'll continue to struggle later on, and I'd rather not force our injured players back in. So this year may be a recalibration. Take a look at how some of those rookies are doing. How does Braden C say some of those other pieces fit into our offense and defense? And this year may be a year for us to figure some stuff out. That being said, if we start off in a hot start, we maybe we can make a run for the NFC North towards the end. What are your thoughts, Anand?
Yeah, no, I mean, I kind of agree. Like, given this injury situation, that's definitely something that we need to take a look at. But I think this team can get 11 wins, right? 6 losses, it's definitely reason. Like, I think 11 to 12 wins is definitely possible. I have them being a little bit more optimistic. I have us going, if I have put it in here properly, but if I have us going, that's not it. But yeah, I have us going like at least 12 to 13 wins. And that is possible. If we get on a hot start, we are probably, 7-2 by the time we hit the Patriots. I think we can definitely maintain that success and get to 11 to 12 wins. Anything higher, we would have had to be really lucky with injuries, and Jonathan Gannon would have had to perform a similar type of miracle that Jeff Hafley had, right? That's the other big question mark. We don't know how this defense is going to be. Yeah, Michael Parsons can come in, but the other positive, or the other, big thing that Jeff Hafley brought in was confusing the offense with different styles of play, right? With different positions, with different, stunts and all of these plays that really confuse the opposing offense. I don't know if Jonathan Gannon is going to do that. How often is Micah Parsons going to play in that stunt position that Jeff Hafley had him play, right? How often is he going to use Edge Cooper as an edge rusher and then also fake it and then make him cover?
Mm-hmm. We will see.
I don't know, right? That's a big question mark. Potentially, this team has a top 10 defense in them, right? If Braden Cisse, becomes the corner that we think he's going to be coming out of the draft, right? This was a very strong secondary draft, but Braden Cisse was one of the highest rated cornerback prospects, and we got him in the second round. So if he is who we think he is, if Javon Bullard stays healthy, if our secondary is going back to the level that it was in 2024 and Keyshawn Nixon isn't a dumbass, then I think we definitely have a chance at having a top 10 defense. And we know we have a top 10 offense. Jordan Love is not going to make too many mistakes. We know we have a top 10 offense. Josh Jacobs, on the field, he's still a top 10 running back. This offensive line is improving from a health position as well. When we look at the starting five, Jordan Morgan as our left tackle, Aaron Banks obviously as our guard, Sean Ryan as a center, Anthony Belton as a right guard, and then Zach Bakobawele, who used to be Zach Tom, right? So this five has not, knock on wood, has not had any sort of injury history, a significant injury history. And they're all entering the season healthy. They seem to be, the starting five for at least, for the foreseeable future. And then our depth is also pretty decent. So honestly, I am pretty high on the Packers. But yeah, big question mark is the injury, especially from a defensive standpoint. If our injury was, go ahead.
Oh, no, just maybe two things on the schedule. Something that stuck out to me. 6 primetime games. So in an 17 games, having 6, I think expectations are high. So that actually leads me to my second point. Expectations are high, 6 primetime games, new defensive coordinator. How do you guys feel about Matt LaFleur? Matt LaFleur has been there since 2019. I graduated in 2019, so I've only known one Packers head coach since in my adult world, I guess. So obviously I know the success that he's had with Rodgers, and I look back at his records and stuff. A lot of that is on the laurels of Aaron Rodgers. So these past few years with Jordan Love are the first time we've actually gotten to see him without like a bona fide superstar. Is Matt LaFleur, is there a certain bar or benchmark you guys are looking for with Matt LaFleur in terms of job safety and everything?
Why don't you take it the first crack?
Yeah, and I can take this pretty quickly too. I mean, look, at the end of the day, like Matt LaFleur we understand what he is. He does a fantastic job of running our offense the way that he runs it. But at the end of the day, he's not a fantastic clock manager. I think anybody from the Shanahan tree has the same problem where they all run into the same issues of just, you could have a middle schooler who plays Madden run a better 2-minute drill than some of those guys. And so that manifests itself in Matt LaFleur as well. I think at the end of the day, he is he can't really do so much to lose his job in my eyes. I think the question mark is, especially this year, knowing what our team is going to be struggling. I think if we're off on a hot start again and we look to be in a good place and we still screw it up, I think maybe then the discussion becomes about his position and his job. But that being said, I think we know what Matt LaFleur is. That is just going to be the natural consequence of his what he does. Any difference in opinion?
No, not really. I mean, like you said, we know who he is. We know his inability to not inability, but kind of like a lack of motivation coming out of the bye, getting them prepared. And that's good. When you mentioned, the Rams coming out of the bye in SoFi, I'm like, okay, here we go again. We saw this in 2021, and back then, it was, I think, the Chargers that we had faced in SoFi when they had just opened up. And it was like, what the hell are we doing? That type of a performance. It was completely brain dead, performance from everyone. They were not prepared at all. And we just see that consistently time and time and time again. We just know what this is going to be, right? It's going to be a difficult game coming out of the bye week, starting in the beginning of the season. But we also know what his strengths are, and that is his creative play calling. That is his ability to get, players in open spaces and provide the quarterback with the tools to succeed. And if he has a strong, caliber, potential top 10 caliber quarterback, which we do in Jordan Love, then this offense is going to be successful. But what we know is he's not like a rah-rah motivator like Dan Campbell is. He is not a hard-nosed veteran, like, who's not respectable, but a respectable veteran like, Andy Reid. He is who he is, and I don't think that's going to change. But the Packers realized that because they gave him a contract extension. I think they gave him a 3 or 4 year contract extension. So he's not going anywhere at the end of this season. We're stuck with him for the foreseeable future. If there's not a single Super Bowl appearance at the end of this contract, then I think they start to look at it, because this front office has also made every indication possible that they're not going to be of the Packers old, where they just keep sticking with their traditional players year in, year out, despite any sort of failures. They're quick to pull the plug on those who are not performing that well. So, given the fact that he has had this contract extension, if we don't see a Super Bowl, at least a Super Bowl appearance, I don't know about a ring, but at least a Super Bowl appearance in the next 3 to 4 years, questions are going to be asked. And at the end of this year, I think for us, our expectations are perform well in the playoffs. Let's not make the same mistakes that we have made in the previous year's playoffs, right? Where we were up with a lead, we make boneheaded mistakes, and we choke the game away. If we lose out respectably, then I think that's at least a positive news, because this, again, it's a young team that's slowly maturing. We still have all these players under contract. From an offensive standpoint, all of our key skill players are locked under contract for at least the next 3 years. So we know we have a good bit of a window. We have Micah Parsons. We have this defense for the next 2 to 3 years. So we know if we plug a little bit of holes, we build up on the performances this year, we shore up some of our depth, which we know the Packers are really good at drafting depth, then next year can be, the next, push. But honestly, this year there are a lot of questions, but I'm still kind of optimistic. I don't see the NFC as competitive as the AFC. I will say that.
Yep.
I feel like that there are 2 tiers of the NFC, right? You have your Seahawks, Rams, and Seahawks, Rams.
I think it's just those two really right now. With the NFC.
It's just those two.
Those guys
Seahawks,
are noticeably
Rams.
better. I'm like, wait a minute, you guys are a lot better.
Right. And then we
Then-
have the next 4, which are Lions, Packers, Bears, Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
And
That's a
then
good way of saying it.
potentially 49ers if the electric substation doesn't, become the Grim Reaper.
Yeah.
So,
I got a follow-up
Yeah.
question, and this is kind of like related, kind of came up. Michigan's head, stick with me here. Michigan's head football coach, they just announced a guy named Kyle Whittingham. Didn't understand the rivalry coming in really as much, and he's kind of getting some flack right now. And he was, a lot of times when you're brought into a rivalry head coach, it's like to beat a rival team. Like,
right.
you have to come in to beat Ohio State. And for a lot of the times when the Bears announced a new head coach is like, all right, are you going to beat the Packers? Are you going to beat Aaron Rodgers and the Packers? Do you think for Matt LaFleur, now that the Bears are actually kind of an adversary opponent and you know the history, do you think that's now part of the job wreck? It used to be something that was an automatic tick for a lot of times for Packers fans. I don't think it's an automatic tick anymore. Do you think that's part of the job requirement now that, hey, you need to beat your team's rival? Does that affect his performance evaluation now?
I honestly think yes, because we've been pretty inconsistent against our division rivals. A couple years we whitewashed the Detroit Lions or the Chicago Bears or the Minnesota Vikings, and then a couple years we go 0-6 against them, right? So we need to be a little bit more consistent in the way that we play against our rivals. The NFC North, again, that as we mentioned, is a stacked division. Any team in this division can get to the playoffs. Minnesota Vikings, if they solve their quarterback issue, I would not be surprised if they're in the playoffs.
And we will get back to that soon. But I would like to say, just hearing all this great analysis from both Naveen and Dieter, I pray I'm saying that right. I don't want to butcher it. But after all, I'm the only non-NFC North. But I have to say, if I had the rankings, definitely Packers are a top 5 NFC team that can make a run to the playoffs. I think, and again, and talking about the rivalry, I heard of what the Michigan head coach said. I'm sorry. Right now, the NFC North is going to be getting back to what it was before, a freaking gauntlet. Because if you look past, it was all dominated by Green Bay. They had no problem whatsoever. Now you have Kevin O'Connell trying to figure out what the hell he's doing, and he has Brian Flores to help him out. Ben Johnson is giving him confidence. Dan Campbell is telling the Lions to bite kneecaps. And now you have Matt LaFleur, who's been there for so long. I would agree with you guys. I think this year and next year, Matt LaFleur is going to be on the hot seat. If he does not change, other than special teams, he needs to find a way to finish games, especially in the second round because I think that's where they have fucked up. Pardon my French. And Jordan Love has been when Jordan Love is locked on, he is locked on. I honestly think LaFleur has to change his play calling. Has to change his offensive schemes, especially on a 2-minute drill. And special teams. Death taxes and special teams, 3 things. I know this is all covered up, but this has to be reinstated. If the Packers, and you know what? I got to beat the Dole moment right here. I'm going to say this out loud because I know I'll get to the Vikings later on, but I have no faith in them whatsoever. But no, honestly, I could give a rat's ass. But honestly, I'm going to say this out loud, beat the Dole moment. I think the Packers win the NFC North. I honestly think they do. Because there's so much turnover happening. I think the Bears are probably going to have a step down. The Lions, they're still trying to figure out what because I still think because they did lose Ben Johnson. Maybe the second year offensive coordinator does well, but are you very, very confident in some of that turnover they had on defense? Hell, Terrion Arnold's gone. I know that they're trying out Trevon Diggs. I don't know what the hell is going on with that. I know that'll be discussed later on. And plus, it's gonna be, and the Vikings, they're gonna be a wild card contender. Spoiler alert, that's what's gonna happen. And I think the Packers, if they can find that consistency, I would say in the middle of the season, if they can find that consistency and win those games in that gauntlet stretch, I think they can prove themselves to be a top 3 team in the NFC. I honestly think they can.
Okay. Alrighty. Final thoughts, Nabil, on the rivalry?
Yeah, look, I think it's the most established rivalry in the history of maybe any league ever. And so it's just one of those things where like obviously those games matter a little bit more. It's a pride thing over anything else, and to the fans at the end of the day, that's what matters. And so I think absolutely the position, the like thought on a coach absolutely shifts as those games go sour. So 100%, I think that it puts Matt LaFleur in a bad like line of sight for fans, especially our organization. I don't know, but at the end of the day, Packers, like you said, are fan owned, and so when we like feel some type of way, we make it known, and I think the organization acts. And so I think if the Packers like the fans are in the negative light of you, then that's what's you're gonna see that reflected with the coach choice.
Okay. Alrighty, excellent analysis as always. Thank you again, Nabil, for your thoughts on the Packers, and hopefully it is what happens in the future. We do well in the playoffs and we move on.
Fingers crossed.
But
go Pack, go.
Go Pack, go. Before we move on to the Vikings, unfortunately, we have to say goodbye to Dieter. He has some other business to attend to. So, Dieter, thank you again for joining the podcast. We obviously appreciate everything that you said about the Bears, and we'll bring you on next time whenever we have another episode with the Bears. So where can, I don't know if you have any public social media, available, but where can they find you on social media?
Yeah, you can follow me at Deets by Dre on IG. But Nabil, Rakshak, Anand, it's been good talking. Nabil and Anand, we got to watch the Bears Packers game this fall. We'll be back in Ann Arbor on campus.
We have
and
to.
I think it'll be fun, man. We watched. I know Anand, me and you watched that first of the 3 games, and these games have a new flavor now. I think it's really exciting, and having friends on the other side, it actually makes it way more fun. I'm not actually like swearing on the TV for once. It's actually kind of like I don't know. It's more engaging and more lively. I don't know. So it's like I'm looking forward to it. But yeah, I'll see you guys back in the fall. See you guys in Ann Arbor in the fall. Ruksha, catch you around too, and I'll see you at the next podcast.
Yeah.
Alrighty. Thank you, Dieter. Alrighty. Let's move on to the Vikings. Let's be very brief because we know time is running out. So.
Yeah. I'll try and make this as quick as possible, but what to say about the as I call from Tom Grossi, the purple incarnations of Satan. The Minnesota Vikings.
They don't deserve the Vikings, all right?
All I can say is
the Vikings.
If I had one sentence to talk about, it was a mixed bag. QB carousels, injuries on the O-line. You started 4-8, and yeah, you had a 5-game winning streak, but doesn't matter that much. And JJ McCarthy, this was JJ McCarthy's first season as a starter. It was rough. You know that meme from Avatar: The Last Airbender? Zuko's like, "That's rough, buddy." That's literally what it was for him. I know I'm bringing the pop culture stuff and all that, but I don't care. It's NFL Masala. That's how we fucking roll. But I think with JJ McCarthy, we could see why he was like drafted early, coming out of Michigan when they implemented more of that run scheme, that run attack first, and then his ability to throw the ball and all that. But it was rough. He had a lot of consistency issues. That's what was one of the reasons why, like, we were sure, like, is he really like an early first year for a first round QB? But I mean, he did finish with 1,632 passing yards, but 11 touchdowns and 12 INTs. It was bad. And if I had the main offensive performer, it was Jay Jetta, Justin Jefferson, 84 receptions, 1,048 receiving yards, two touchdowns, surprisingly, because I think a lot of them was taken by Jordan Addison before. I know he had like that injury. Nabil, just correct me. Nabil or Anna, just correct me if I'm If it's true. Okay, perfect. Thank you. I mean, and there was barely any rushing attack. I know they had like Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason. Jordan Mason led the team with 758 rushing yards. I mean, the only saving grace was that Brian Flores defense, honestly. He was the reason why this Vikings team was alive. Red zone, and plus, I mean, they were seventh in the NFL in red zone defense allowed. They only allowed 19.6 points per game, according to Pro Football Reference. But the run defense, they allowed 2,110 rushing yards. You can literally run the ball through the middle, like open zone, and they would part like Moses. Let my people go. The only guy there was like Blake Cashman, led the team with 144 tackles. And apparently there's a special teams weapons that they had. Miles Price, he set the franchise record for combined kick and punt return yards in a single season. And I think what I have to say really incredible for Justin Jefferson, even with a bad passing pass attack, Jay Jetta still is that guy. Why the Vikings took him, it still pains me as an Eagles fan on why the fuck did we should get Jalen Reagor over Justin Jefferson. It pisses me off to that day, but thank God Howie Roseman. But because of that, we were able to get Devontae Smith and we trade for AJ Brown. Later story, and but I mean the turnover bug, 21 total interceptions. I mean there was one point in which Carson Wentz took over. We saw how that happened. Watch Carson Wentz versus the Eagles. We kicked his ass. And also, if you want to talk about defensive highs, like what I really liked about Brian Flores, like the Harrison Smith on the back. He was like that team captain, and him running that 3-4 defense, beautiful. But the sack production, I think the front seven itself, they generated I think they led in like a couple of pass rush win rates. And they were ranked at top of league in total sacks, but and apparently they had a couple of close wins. If I remember, during that 5-game winning streak, they held the Giants to just 13 points in the finale. But again, the airborne takeaways, I think that was like one of the things, like forcing turnovers. That's what they could have improved on. So, I mean, it was like a lot of things that you could look into, but it's like, yes, there's some promise, but you just looked at JJ McCarthy's first year. I think honestly, you have to have JJ McCarthy play a full healthy season. Your thoughts on that, Nabil, so far? Like anything that you noticed from the Vikings, like when the Packers have played them?
At the end of the day, your analysis is 100% correct. That the Vikings, they're carried by their defense the best that they could do. That offense struggled hard. Kudos to Jay Jettis for getting 1,000 yards, even with that horrible QB situation. I think this year is going to be interesting. Absolutely. I mean, I know you want to get moving around the speed sense, so I'll jump right into it. Of like getting Kyler Murray is a big change for them.
Oh my God, that was a shock. Like I mean, if you want to talk, getting into it, man, like I think that was like one of the biggest acquisitions that they got.
100%.
I thought they would have easily solved their QB situation, but now it's like the Vikings is like, what the hell? Are they backpedaling? I mean, you're already putting so much faith in JJ McCarthy, but now, and Carson Wentz being a backup QB, I'm perfectly okay with it. But now you're bringing Kyler Murray. It's like, what's happening over there?
Certainly questions to be asked, but I will admit that like for them, if you have that wide receiver core and that offense, like just you having a guy who can at least throw the ball properly is all that it will take. I think this year all that they're trying to do is get, Kyler Murray's on a super cheap deal. Cardinals are still paying for the majority of his contract, and they got a super cheap. So from that scenario, it's like why not? Like you just want a guy who can get the ball to your star player. And if Kyler Murray can do that, if we've seen one thing from Kyler, it's that when he had D-Hop, at least he would at least throw to him. So it's at the end of the day, it's just a guy to get to the ball to Jettis, to Addison, to deal some stuff. Now, can he see over his offensive line? That's still good, yet to be seen. However, Kyler Murray's not gonna win you any games. But he's also like not so bad that he's going to be the sole reason you lose every game. And so that's what JJ McCarthy was. And so that's an upgrade.
And you know what? I would not be surprised if Kevin O'Connell does like one of those like runs like a wildcat formation with like Kyler Murray. I could see that happening because
AOC's he's the QB whisperer, man. He has all the so like if anybody can work his magic on a guy like Kyler Murray, it's going to be Kevin O'Connell. So for the record, more power to Kyler this season. I don't think it's going to go fantastically for them, but that defense is going to drag them kicking and screaming into the contention anyway. So.
Yeah, for 100% sure on that. But yeah, I would also also like a couple of standouts from that defense last year. Former Eagle Isaiah Rodgers, who's plays at nickel. But now I think like he's definitely earned himself like that starting the opposite starting side, and also and then of course Harrison Smith. He's the team captain, led the team with like 2 interceptions. But I think like the lack of like enforcing those turnovers has really hurt them. So I think like that's what they made a couple of improvements. For example, from the Steelers, like some of the things, the moves that they made in the offseason, who they brought in, James Pierce, a serviceable corner for 2 year, $8.5 million. Wide receiver Jawan Jennings from the Niners. I thought that was a very good thing. You're adding another target for Kyler Murray or JJ McCarthy. I mean, you not only with Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason, you can now depend upon Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and now Jawan Jennings. Having Jawan Jennings, who has played in a Kyle Shanahan type of offense. I mean, Kevin Connell, he has some of that experience. Him being under Sean McVay, under that tree, because the branch extends, and then of course, keeping and some of the resignings like Tavir Thomas, Carson Wentz, Andrew DePaula, good, and then also punter Johnny Hecker, special teams, and I thought this was an interesting one. Jamal Adams from the Raiders. We know about his ability, but I think he comes into a better system with Brian Flores. Definitely brings in that veteran leadership, especially with like now that Harrison Smith, I think he's been like released, right? So there is
Harrison Smith, I believe, retired. If I want to say that correctly.
Shoot, I completely forgot about that. So thank you for the correction. That's why we got you, man.
Let me check that. Give me 1 second.
Yeah, no problem. And as I'm going through that,
no, you're correct. He is not officially retired, but he said he is undecided, and like more than likely he will not be playing again.
Right. And then of course, like he's still a free agent. So like Eric Johnson from the Colts, defensive line depth. Isaiah Loudermilk from the Steelers, defensive line depth. Yep. Of course, Kyler Murray. Some of the people that they left out, Jonathan Allen, that trade, going to the Bengals for like 2 years, $25 million. Jalen Naylor. That's a name I haven't heard in a while. He was like lost in that trio between Addison, Jay Jetta, and now Naylor. Javon Hargrave, he goes to the Packers, so Packers got to steal in that one. Honestly, you just basically, I think what they do is like you basically have a good defensive line rotation. That's what Gannon did when he was with the Eagles, when he was the Eagles DC, and he led them to that Super Bowl. I think like he will definitely help out with that. Ryan Wright, punter to the Saints for a 4-year deal. That was shocking. Fabian Moreau, 1-year deal. Justin Skule, left tackle. Ben Sims and Ty Chandler. And then, of course, the trades, especially during the draft, they did trade away one of their best outside linebackers and edges, Jonathan Grenard, to the Eagles during the draft, 2nd round. And they did get a couple of in between they traded with the Panthers and the Pats for like draft picks back and forth. But I thought like it was a pretty good. I mean, like it was more like some veteran depth because they want to still focus on that young talent that they can nurture, and that I think that's like Kevin O'Connell's best thing he can do. So what did they do in the draft? First round they went Caleb Banks, defensive line, Florida. I think it's like I think like some people are shocked about that trade, but I think like about that pick, but I think it was pretty good, especially with Javon Hargrave being gone. He acts as that nose. I think he's going to be. I think they needed they needed help on D line. Javon Hargrave and Jonathan Allen are gone. I mean, you have one established player in Jalen Redmond, so Caleb Banks, you basically plug that in. He is a good run. Elite traits, big size. I know he had like injuries in the past couple of years, but is almost like a boom or bust. But I think like he was like definitely good in like stopping the run. So I thought that was nice. And then round 2, I think this had to be a Brian Flores pick. Round 2, they went Jake Golday, linebacker from Cincinnati. He's an off-ball linebacker, 6'5". Jonathan Grenard was gone. You found your replacement right there. And I think and I believe he is going to be behind Eric Wilson, Blake Cashman, and Dallas Turner. So I thought that, and of course a bit. I think one of the reasons why they brought in drafted Jay Golday, the Vikings allowed 124.1 rushing yards per game last season, up from 96.1 in Flores' first 2 games. So I think like having Caleb Banks as that big interior run stopper, and then having Golday as the back, I can see why he's trying to reinforce that 3-4 style. And then another nose tackle that they got was Dominic, round 3, Dominic. And then because of the Grenard trade, they had a ton of 3rd-round picks. So Dominic Orange, nose tackle from Ohio State, big boy, again, filling up that defensive line. You're building through the trenches. He lined up in nose tackle 74% of his snaps per ESPN research. Caleb Thierman, offensive tackle from Northwestern. To help JJ or Kyler, who are the hell is on QB? I think it's going to be I think he'll be a backup to like the current top backup tackle, which is Ryan Van Denmark, who is apparently 6'7". Caleb Thierman is 6'8", 323. Mind you, guys. And I think like he did allow 24 pressures, 31 blown blocks during the 2023 season. He did reduce it in 2024, so I think it'll be good. Round 3, Jacoby Thomas, safety from Miami. I thought they needed a safety. You don't know about Harrison Smith, so he is that. So I think he was part of that Miami defense. Had 5 interceptions and allowed only 1 touchdown in coverage last season in Miami. He had 10 QB pressures, so I think this was that Harrison Smith replacement for now. And then round 5, they went Max Brederson, tight end / fullback from Michigan. I think this was a CJ Ham replacement because CJ Ham's retired. I think he played some fullback, so I think you put him as. I think he's gonna be from what I'm seeing. The tight end depth they have is TJ Hawkinson, Josh Oliver, Ben Yorsek, and Gavin Bartholomew, who's questionable. So Max Brederson, I think you put him as a fullback. Like if they go jumbo package, which is like two running backs at the back. You start off with 2 running backs, or you go running back and fullback. Round 5, they went Charles Deming, corner from Stephen F. Austin. There's a good old state. He had I think like I mean at the combine, 42-inch vertical, 11-foot broad jump, 4.41 second time in the 40-yard dash. I mean, you're having Byron Murphy, Isaiah Rogers, and free agent James Pierce. I mean, now it's just competition. I think he adds depth. Round 6, Jasmine Claiborne, running back from Wake Forest. I know they were trying to get some depth behind Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason, but I think Claiborne, they needed some kind of explosive. He ran a 4.37 in the 40-yard dash. He adds some kind of I think like he can make some big plays in the running game, but it's going to be a battle for depth. And then round 7, they address their biggest need in the center position. They get Gavin Gerhard, especially with the retirement of Ryan Kelly. I think there was a battle on that. So I think like it's going to be battling Mike Jurgens and Blake Brandel, 2 veterans. I think Brandel, from what I'm hearing, is the he's the favorites to go in, but I think like, but this is an O-line. that allowed 60 sacks due to injuries. So you're banking on Christian Darrisaw and Brian O'Neill to come back, along with Donovan Jackson, who's coming back after a bad first year. So I think it will be very interesting to see. But I mean, all the Vikings that they addressed, I think they went with like needs. They addressed needs, not the best player available at this time. That's what you could characterize. But I think it was a good draft, but they made some changes in the coaching staff. They did let go of the of that general manager. I think so the new general manager, Nolan Teasley, he completely restructured the the front office, hired Trent Kirchner and Andrew Haley as assistant GMs. They hired Trent Kirchner, assistant GM, 27 years of experience. He was previously the Seahawks VP of player personnel. Andrew Healy, hired GM. He spent a decade with the Browns in football analytics. Ryan Pace, football advisor, previously the GM of the Bears. Azam Kapadia from the Seahawks as assistant director of scouting. Departures, we saw Jamal Stephenson being out, Pat Roberts, Cy Chavell, Ryan Gregson, and Demetrius Washington, along with their current, I forget it was a Queefe also. I
You're
can't.
the GM.
Yeah, the Viking, the old Viking.
Quasi Adolfo Mensa.
This is why we have you guys.
Exactly. This is why we have Nabil.
Yes. And I mean, like, in regards of any coaching changes, I think like the major external hires, they brought in Frank Smith, assistant head coach. He was a former Miami Dolphins OC. He joins as the run game planning architect along with Kevin O'Connell. Gerald Alexander, defensive passing game coordinator and defensive backs. He comes from the Steelers, replaces Daronte Jones, who's now the Commanders DC. Ryan Nielsen, defensive line coach and defensive running backs. He was running game coordinator. He was the former senior assistant. And here are some internal changes you might recognize. Josh McCown, he is now the elevated to the QB coach and offensive passing game coordinator. Keith Carter, assistant O-line to primary O-line coach. Ryan Cordell, promote the tight ends coach. And Chris O'Hara now becomes the assistant offensive coordinator, and Mike Saravo. He's the inside line backers coach along with senior defensive assistant. They did let go of Mike Patine, who retired, Daronte Jones, Brian Angelicio. And I think I remember like Joe Casper, or one of them was like the offensive line coach. He's now with the Eagles along with Sean Mannion. So that's from what I remember. So looking at the records, it's going to be very, very tough. And I looked at you want to know how their schedule is going to start off, guys. Are you ready? Game 1 against the Packers, 2 at Bears, 3 at Bucks, 4 at the Dolphins, 5 versus the Saints. At Saints. Mm-hmm. I'm looking at this 3-2, honestly. You could go 3-2. I think they could, or 3-2, 2-3 at best. It's iffy against the Packers because the Vikings will play them tough. Dolphins and Saints, easy wins. You're going to lose to the Bears and the Bucks. Week 6, you got to bye. Then you have a gauntlet. Colts, Falcons, Lions, Bills, Packers, Niners. And then the finish, you have easy teams like the Panthers, maybe the Lions, Commanders, and Jets. Honestly, the lowest they can go would be 9-8 or 8-9. It's going to be tough. They are facing the NFC North is getting a lot tougher. They have AFC East opponents they got like the freaking Bills to worry about. And the Bills, the Niners, and I would say the Bucks. Those are the games I would be circling at best. Maybe the Patriots too. But it's going to be very, very tough. I mean, the only thing that could save them is like Brian Flores, and I'm not sure. And if I had a player to watch out for, if I had a Shandar player of this team to watch out for, I honestly don't know. I doubt. The Vikings. You don't know who the hell is going to be their QB. It could be Kyler Murray one day. It could be JJ McCarthy. I honestly don't know. I have no Shandar player. Man.
That's the thing with the Vikings, right? They're in such a critical season this year because we need to know if JJ McCarthy is the guy moving forward, but he's not healthy enough to make that decision.
But then here's my question, bro. Why the hell did you get Kyler Murray? Why
exactly? They're not comfortable. They're not confident.
It made no fucking sense.
Yeah.
I will say you don't have to pay him any money, and he's a serviceable QB. Like,
right.
At the end of the day, it's like the Cardinals are paying his whole salary, so it's like might as well. Why not? And again, like I said before, you just need a guy who can throw the ball at Jettis. That's it. Now again, can he see over his offensive line? No, but that's fine. Like it is what it is. It's just like again, I don't think there's real hope for them to do anything.
That's too much hope. But yeah, anyway, on a side note, I have a meeting to get ready for, so I gotta go.
All right. So,
but appreciate it. Appreciate it, Anand. Thank you so much for that. Signing out.
Have fun. All righty. Let's finish off with the Lions. Just you and me, Nabil.
Sounds good.
All righty. Well, last year, I mean, they were last in the division, failed to get it to the playoffs, 9-8 record. But initially it didn't seem like they were hurting with the loss of Ben Johnson because you had some of those insane offensive performances, right? A 52-21 win against the Bears, 38-30 win, 34-10 win, 37-24 win. So they started 5-2 with some massive victories. Kind of reminiscent of that season in 2014 or 2015 from the Packers where we had like two 52-point games. One against the Bears and then once against the Eagles. It kind of reminded me of that sort of like offensive performance, and that's without Ben Johnson. So clearly like Dan Campbell has the offensive pedigree to continue to build a successful offense. And Jared Goff, he was still an excellent quarterback without Ben Johnson. He still had around 4,400 passing yards, 37 or 34 touchdowns, if I'm not wrong. And then from a QB, from an EPA per dropback situation, he was also 11th in the league. So overall, over the entire course of the season, Jared Goff wasn't the issue. What was the issue, honestly, which was the loss of Ben Johnson, was their running game. It did take a small hit. They landed 17th at the end of the season in rush EPA, 23rd in success rate. But, that wasn't a Jahmyr Gibbs issue. I think he had, if I'm not wrong, over 2,000 yards all-purpose yards and around 15 or so touchdowns. And so clearly it wasn't a Jahmyr Gibbs issue. It felt more like an offensive line and a scheme issue where they just couldn't generate as much, as many yards before contact as they were able to before, right? When Ben Johnson was there. And I think that was the loss that they really felt towards the end of the season when things just went off the rails. And that really happened when they faced so many injuries upon injuries, especially from the defensive front. This is something that, when you take a holistic view of this entire season, this is something that you see in the last 8 games that they had played. They only won 3. So they went 3-5 in the last 8 games. And the defense gave up 20 or more points in 6 of those 8 games. So when your defense is giving up that many points, when you're facing that many injuries, when you've lost Sam Laporta for the season, when you've lost, a couple more defensive players when you've
I
lost
was gonna say
Terry
the
Arnold.
entire. I was gonna say if you want specifics, the entire defense was almost
Yeah.
gone, and that's a continued issue into the year. If we want to talk about this now, but basically,
Exactly.
losing Terry Arnold is huge this year. Coming into the season with his off of the field issues, you need a guy like Dennis Rakestraw Jr. to really step forward and do a good job. But losing both your starting safeties in Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph is a massive hole you need to fill. You had cornerback, you started Rock Yassin. You have a bunch of like 30, 40-year-old veterans that are randomly starting in your safety positions, even starting at this year. So at the end of the day, like you have that many injuries, that many problems. And again, those guys are still on the PUP list. Like Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph are still not performing at all. So we don't even know if we're going to see them at the beginning of this season. So like you're going to struggle out the gate here. Same issue with the Packers that we talked about earlier of having injuries at the beginning. You're going to continue to struggle a little bit. Offense, not a problem. Defense, injury struggles and problems are going to continue to be there. Now, Aiden Hutchinson coming back, like being full strength and having all that stuff, abilities will be much better. But again, with no secondary to back you up, you can only do so much with your edge rush.
Yeah, no, 100%. So yeah, looking back, it was a season to forget for the Lions because I think they had such high hopes, kind of like the Bucks. Bucks started 6-2, then the injuries just like continued to pile on, and they just weren't able to win enough games without a proper defense on the field. So.
Agreed.
Yeah, looking back and looking at the off-season moves that they've made now, bringing in, so they brought in a lot of one-year veteran players. They brought in some depth on the offensive line with Juice Scruggs, Larry Borum. They brought in Cade Mays from the Panthers on a 3-year deal to be their starting center after letting go of Graham Glasgow, who actually retired.
Real quick there for half a second, I'll pause you. Cade Mays is also injured. He's going to be expected to be gone 8 to 10 weeks. So they don't have the starting center either.
Oh my Lord.
Yeah, fractured wrist, and you for sure need that as a center. So.
Oh yeah.
Unfortunately.
Okay, so who is their? Oh, let's just take a look at their starting center then.
Probably
it's Juice
the
Scruggs.
biggest guy they can find in the stands. But
yeah. Oh man, I think Juice Scruggs, he's listed as the starting center. He did have some center snaps back in when he was playing with the Houston Texans, but obviously this
he's not a real center
situation.
So
he's more of a guard, but yeah.
You lost Ragnar and then Glasgow, and
Tyler Conklin they also brought in. I think he's also injured. Roger McGreary, DJ Wanham, Greg Dortch, former Arizona Cardinal, Peyton Turner on a 1-year deal just to beef up that D line. They brought in a lot more, under the radar wide receivers, and then.
They did lose David Montgomery to the Texans, which they brought in Isaiah Pacheco to replace him for. Now, again, as of this morning, officially announced, Isaiah Pacheco does have a MCL strain or a sprain or something along those lines. And so he is week to week as well, but he thinks should be good by the end starting of the season. But replacing Montgomery with a guy like Pacheco makes sense. They're both just hard runners at the end of the day, so that makes sense. It's to spell Gibbs. Yeah. And when you look at last season's performance from David Montgomery, it was only around 500 yards that he was able to perform, which is something that Isaiah Pacheco can give, right? 100%.
Even as the starting running back, I think he was generating it almost to 1,000 yards on a season basis with the Chiefs. So playing that secondary role behind Jahmyr Gibbs. What I am going to worry about though is they might give more red zone snaps to Isaiah Pacheco now, and take some snaps away from Jahmyr Gibbs. That could be a possibility. So we'll see how that goes. But Sam Laporta, he's now healthy. Brock Wright is also healthy. He ended up being on the IR at the end of last season, but he's listed as healthy right now. But again, their defense, they're both starting safeties. Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph still out, right? So you have Avonte Maddox and Chuck Clark. Now,
much like, dude, that's ago, I was gonna say, dude, like 6 years ago, that would have been like, oh, solid, dude. These group. Yeah. Now it's like, oh man, we're really skipping the bottom of the veteran barrel here.
Exactly. Yeah, and Rock Yassin, DJ Reed. Obviously, DJ Reed is their
DJ
starting
Reed's
corner.
solid, but Rock
He's a
Yassin,
really
like
good
again, he's
one.
been
But
around the block, so like
yeah, former Colt. I think he played on the Jets, if I'm not wrong. But
he did for a little while. I
definitely,
think he was a Bronco for a
yeah,
bit too, but yeah.
yeah. They also brought in Christian
And Raider.
Isdian. Yeah.
Christian Izzian, yeah.
What?
Yeah, Christian Izzian, yep.
Yeah, Christian Isdian, but he's also listed out. So yeah, Ennis
Mhm.
Rakestraw, this is his year. It's literally his year to show
Yep,
up
can he do it?
and exactly perform on the field. So I
We'll see.
mean, we'll see. So looking at some of their looking at all of the players that they have let go, looking at some of the people that they did bring in, it's really just shoring up their depth. They didn't really bring in that many important starters besides like someone like someone like Cade Mays, but he's now injured, so
Mhm.
we'll see how that goes. But Isaiah Pacheco, Peyton Turner potentially, but besides that, they didn't really bring in that many starters. Right now, when we look at their draft, they brought in Blake Miller as their tackle to replace not Graham. Who was their tackle before it? That
Yeah,
just
I
Taylor
forget.
Decker.
Yeah. Yes, Taylor
There
Decker.
we go, Taylor Decker. Yeah, so they released him in the offseason, and they did. The lines that one credit to them is they're one of the best teams in terms of drafting an offensive line. Drafting
Mhm.
and developing an offensive line. They're one of the best teams up there with the Packers and the Eagles and some of these other teams. But that is something that they've always been good at, and I'm not shocked to see Blake Miller now drafted out of Clemson. So this really shores up that offensive line. You got Blake Miller as the right tackle, Penei Sewell obviously as the left tackle, probably the best left tackle in the league. Christian Mahogany, who was my draft crush when he was drafted. I was hoping that he was going to be drafted, but instead, the Packers drafted. Who did we draft? We drafted. Who was the center that we let go of last year? I am blanking. I'm blanking. But he was. You're on mute. You're on mute.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say the guy we brought in was Jaeger Burton, but I'm forgetting the guy that we let go. I know you're talking about. Yes.
Yeah. But yeah, so Christian Mahogany and now G Scruggs and Tate Rattler. So this seems like a solid enough offensive line. Let's see if they actually perform well. But yeah, from a draft perspective, one of the best, draft picks they did get was Derek Moore from Michigan. Go Blue. He is now going to be learning under Aiden Hutchinson, another Michigan. So, honestly, from their draft perspective, it was maybe potentially some starters. I don't really see Derek Moore in there. Did he change his name or something? To Derek Barnes? No. Because I don't see him listed on the. Oh, no, there it is. Never mind. He's listed as questionable. Okay.
Right, of course.
Another injury. Oh, my Lord. Yeah, so some other draft picks that they made, Jimmy Rolder, linebacker from Michigan, Keith Abney, their corner in the 5th round from Arizona State, Kendrick Law, wide receiver, and then Skylar Gill Howard, D tackle, and then Tyree West, another D lineman in the 7th round. Now, one big change that they did make is they let go of their previous offensive coordinator and they signed Drew Petzing. So they brought in Drew Petzing, who was previously the Cardinals offensive coordinator for the past 2 years. There were some rumors that Drew Petzing is on the on the track to become a potential head coach. I know that he was getting some of those knocks from some players, but I think working with an offense like the Lions is a much better next step for him than be given a potential head coaching candidacy and then just having him flame out, which happens a lot more than people think. Especially for someone who's coming from a kind of a very hit and miss Cardinals offense, right? Especially with Kyler Murray there. Even if you brought in Marvin Harrison, it wasn't really that successful. So we'll see what he's able to do with this pedigree of with this caliber of players, with Amon-Ra St. Brown there, obviously Jameson Williams, Jahmyr Gibbs, Sam Laporta. Like, this offense is still stacked. This offense is still going to be one of the best offenses in the league. I'm still saying that this is a top 10 offense, probably a top 5 offense if they limit some of their turnovers. But obviously, this is really dependent on Drew Petzing. He comes from the Vikings and Cleveland Browns. So from a scheme perspective, he was under Kevin Stefanski in 2020. So potentially he has like a West Coast scheme, but I think it's knowing the style of offense that the Lions would like to run with Dan Campbell one. Probably a power run offense would make more sense. Power run play action would probably make more sense for this team, considering the offensive line that they have. Considering that Jared Goff is a pretty good pocket passer, and that's like his talent. His talent is not to be a scrambler. His talent is not to escape the pocket. It's deliver, quick passes, be accurate, get the ball out of your hands. So we'll see what sort of scheme he brings in, but that's going to be the biggest question mark, well, not the biggest, but that's going to be one of the big question marks going into this season is Drew Petzing. Can he maintain the same level of offensive success that the Lions had last year? But the biggest question is going to be how are these injuries going to affect this defense? Because they're already under the gun. They still have the same defensive coordinator as last year, Kelvin Shepard. So at least you have continuity from that perspective, but you have no continuity. You have very little continuity from a player standpoint, because you have a lot of players coming in and out due to injuries and due to off the field issues. You lost your best corner in Terrion Arnold due to an off the field issue. Your star pass rusher, one of the best pass rushers in the game, is coming off of a long hiatus due to an injury. So we'll see if he's as effective as before. You still have some very significant pieces injured who are potentially going to come in later in the season. And when we take a look at their schedule, I predicted that they would have around 11 wins. And it would be like 11-6 team, but not the best team in the division, because because I think the Bears and the Packers are just one level above the Lions right now, given the amount of injuries that the Lions have had. But when you look at this schedule, pretty easy schedule to start with. They do have the second easiest schedule, apparently based on team rankings from the previous year. And you can see that, right? You got Jets, Panthers, Cardinals, you got the Dolphins. Bucks is a pretty decent matchup, but you got the Falcons and the Titans and the Giants. So they should be able to win all of these weaker opponents. But the question mark games are going to be against the Bills, against the Patriots, of course, against the NFC North. And I think that they probably win 11 games, but they don't really do that well against our division. I think they probably split between the Vikings or the Bears. They probably whitewash the Vikings, considering that the Vikings don't really have a suitable offense. But I think they lose both games to the Packers, uh, same way as it happened last year. They just don't have the defense to contend with the higher tiers
Yeah.
of the NFC, and they probably lose out against the Bears. So, um, do they make the playoffs? Potentially. I think they potentially make the playoffs, but maybe as like a wild card team. I don't really see them progressing that late into the
Yeah,
playoffs.
it'll be a tough push. They have an early bye. They also have the Allianz Arena Germany game, so there's some
Right.
complicated pieces in there. I agree with you 100% that it's going to be tough. They're for sure you can reach the 11-win piece, but like it'll depend on some of the pieces coming back, getting a little bit healthier, and it'll depend on there. So yeah, I think the NFC North overall, I think through our whole discussion today it's going to be a tough ass division, man. It's going to be a lot of scrappiness. There's going to be some games that like one individual play may decide the division. And so, like,
Right.
that's going to be, at the end of the day, all the teams involved here that we discussed today, besides the Vikings, really, are going to need to really be on their A game all throughout the season. As soon as some of those injury pieces comes back, and the Bears are in the healthiest position to start out the year, but the the Packers and Lions cannot be counted out. So we may see another situation where three teams go into this playoffs from the same division, and that could just be a result of us all like beating out the other teams and scrapping between ourselves. So could come down to one place. So we'll see. I'm excited though.
It is very exciting because when you look at the NFC South, there's probably just going to be one team. That division is so weak right now. Every single team has so many significant flaws. So you probably just have the worst team in the NFC coming from the NFC South. NFC West, you potentially have three teams, and then NFC North, you potentially have three teams. So it honestly, that last wild card position is really going to come down to, I think, the Lions and the Niners, because I see the same sort of situation across the NFC West and the NFC North. You have your top two teams in the Rams and Seahawks, the Bears, Packers here, and then whoever gets to that third position then fights out against the other teams in the NFC for that last wild card spot, because Eagles are going to be there. Maybe Cowboys if they're good enough, but yeah. Alrighty. Well, that's going to be it for us today. If you guys have enjoyed, please leave us a review on one of the 4 podcast platforms that we host a podcast on: Apple, Google, Spotify, Pocket Casts. Actually, Google does not exist. So instead, you can follow us on Instagram, Threads, and YouTube at NFL Masala 2022. It's NFL Masala 2022. And Nabil, thank you again for joining the podcast. As always, man, I really appreciate your thoughts on the Packers and the entire NFC North. And where can they find you on social media?
Oh, I'm good. I got all my stuff situated. I appreciate the plug, but you can find me back here potentially in a little bit. We'll see when some of the other stuff comes out. So that's where
we'll see. Alrighty, we're gonna hit you guys with our signature outro. Go Pack, go!
Go Pack, go!
Alrighty, take care and have a good night.